Tim Cook turned Apple into the most profitable company in history. And I think that might be the most damning thing you could say about it.
Steve, can you please unpack that? Because half the internet just spit out their coffee.
We were never supposed to be ordinary. We were supposed to make people feel like the future had arrived. I don't think Apple makes anyone feel that anymore.
Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple, the man who gave you the iPhone, the Mac, Pixar, and a completely unrealistic standard for product design. He was also fired from his own company, denied paternity of his firstborn daughter while worth millions, and chose alternative medicine over surgery when he had treatable cancer, a decision that very likely shortened his life by years. He is, in other words, a genuinely complicated man, and he's here. Steve, welcome to Interviews from the Grave. You just said Apple became ordinary. If you could, what would you change or get rid of?
I'd apply one test to every product. Can you explain what it is and why only Apple should make it in a single sentence? If you can't, it goes. When I came back in 1997, Apple had over 40 product lines. I drew a 2x2 grid, consumer, pro, desktop, portable, and said, 4 great products, nothing else. Focus is saying no to 100 good ideas so the one you ship is genuinely great. I don't see that ruthless focus anymore. The Mac Pro in its current form is a monument to engineering ego. Beautiful, technically extraordinary, purchased by approximately 12 people. I'd rather make one desktop that's insanely great for 90% of users than a rack-mounted cathedral that nobody attends. What I'd greenlight? One thing, and I'd bet the company on it. A personal intelligence layer that makes every Apple device feel like it genuinely knows you. Not Siri as a voice-activated search bar, something that understands context, protects your privacy completely, and is so integrated into the hardware that nobody else can replicate it. That is the next great platform, and Apple is watching OpenAI build it while polishing the same aluminum chassis for the 14th year in a row.
Sorry to stop you. The next great platform. Siri was supposed to be that in 2011. You launched it. Are you allowed to be disappointed in something you shipped?
Yes, and I am. Siri became a product team instead of a mission. The moment that happens, the thing dies slowly. You stop asking, what should this be, and start asking, what can we ship this quarter? Those are completely different questions.
You invented the device that is now blamed for anxiety, addiction, and an epidemic of young men who can't read a paragraph without checking their phone. Do you take responsibility for that? Or is this the part where you say, it's just a tool?
I take responsibility for everything Apple shipped, the good and the bad. We set out to put a bicycle for the mind in everyone's pocket. A bicycle doesn't make you lazy. It multiplies what you're already capable of. That was the vision. What we didn't anticipate was an entire industry of behavioral psychologists being paid fortunes to engineer the most addictive possible experience into every app on the platform we built. We made the pipe, we didn't make the drug. That's a distinction I'm less comfortable with the longer I sit with it. Here's what I'll say honestly. The best minds of my generation figured out how to make people scroll. That is a colossal waste of human potential. I didn't get into this business to help people consume. I got into it to help people create. If I were running Apple today, the product I'd be most focused on is one that actually helps you get off your phone.
Let me stop you right there. I made the pipe, not the drug, is a sentence that has been said by a lot of people throughout history, and it has not held up well for most of them.
You're not wrong.
You said Bill Gates would be a broader man if he dropped acid and visited a commune. He built a monopoly on mediocrity, you said. Now you're both on this side of history. Who won? And were you just a bad loser?
Bill was never passionate about the product. He was passionate about the business. The products were technically competent and emotionally inert. They worked. They spread everywhere. They never made you feel anything. Did Microsoft win? Through most of the 90s, yes. And I was furious. I won't pretend otherwise, but the devices that matter most to people today, the ones they sleep next to, that their children grow up with, those run our software or descend directly from what we built.
The devices people sleep next to. You know that's also a description of the thing causing the mental health crisis we just discussed. I just want to make sure we're tracking the full ledger.
I'll give you that one. What I will say about Bill, his foundation work is the most impressive second act I've ever seen from anyone in technology. And he took the skills he built in business and aimed them at malaria and polio. I have a lot of respect for that. On wanting the world to be genuinely better, I think we were actually closer than people realized.
Apple Intelligence launched, and the reviews included the words, fine, passable, and, my personal favorite, it's something. OpenAI and Google are rewriting what computers can do. Is privacy just the excuse Apple uses when it's actually just slow?
Privacy as a genuine moral conviction and privacy as a business strategy are two different things. The danger is using a real value as cover for being late. Apple's position in AI right now reminds me of 1997. Not bankrupt, but drifting. Lots of features, none of them cohesive, none making you feel like the future had arrived. The right answer isn't to build a cloud model and compete with OpenAI on their terms, and that race is already lost. The right answer is to do what Apple has always done. Control the entire stack. Put the intelligence on device, make it so deeply integrated into the hardware that nobody else can replicate it. The M series chips make this possible. The question is whether there's anyone there with the vision to execute it. Siri is the most embarrassing thing Apple ships. We launched it before it was ready. It became a product team with quarterly targets, and it has been dying slowly ever since.
You just said you launched Siri before it was ready. You, the man who legendarily refused to ship anything until it was perfect, launched it before it was ready. How does that happen?
The same way most mistakes happen. I believed we could fix it in the next version. We couldn't, and then it became someone else's problem to fix, and then someone else's, and now here we are.
Let's talk Vision Pro. $3,500. Weighs as much as my regrets. Needs an external battery. Minimal apps. Sales underwhelming. Did Apple ship this too early? Or is this just what the first iPhone looked like before everyone understood what it was?
There are two kinds of early. There's first iPod early, expensive, incomplete, but the core insight is so right that everything else is just details. And there's Apple TV hobby early, a project that never quite has the courage to be a real product. Vision Pro is the most technically impressive thing Apple has shipped in a decade. But you're right that it's a $3,500 question looking for $1 million answer. What is this actually for? What does someone do with this that they couldn't do better another way?
Let me stop you there. Shouldn't that question be answered before the $3,500 price tag, not after?
Yes, I would not kill it, but I'd tell the team 2 years, find the use case that makes someone say, I cannot do this without Vision Pro, or take everything you learned and start again, lighter, cheaper, more focused. The destination is AR glasses that disappear on your face. Vision Pro is the spacecraft you build to figure out how to get there. That's legitimate, but you have to be honest that that's what it is.
Former employees describe working for you as psychologically devastating and also the best work of their lives, which tells me either you were a visionary or you were an abuser who got lucky with the product lineup. If Apple had failed, you'd just be a cautionary tale. Do you accept that?
If Apple had failed, I'd be a cautionary tale. That's honest, and I accept it. The line between demanding and cruel, I crossed it often. There's a version of high standards that elevates people. There's a version that humiliates them. I did both, and I shouldn't have done the second one. But here's what I know. The majority of people who will tell you working for me was brutal will also tell you it was the best work of their lives, because I refused to let them settle. In a world where good enough is the default, being around someone who genuinely won't accept it can transform what you're capable of. What I'd tell young leaders, demand everything. Be relentless on quality. But you don't have to make people feel small to get great work. I learned that too late.
The pandemic arrived, everyone went home, and Silicon Valley spent 3 years paying engineers to sit in their kitchens. You believed in the room, same room, 2 a.m, arguing. Is that world gone?
No, but the people building great things are doing it the same way it's always been done. Total obsession, same room, arguing about details nobody outside the team will ever consciously notice, but that make the difference between something magical and something forgettable. Comfort is the enemy of breakthrough work. Not because suffering is valuable, it isn't, but because the best things come from a state of total engagement that is incompatible with watching the clock. Remote works for some jobs, but the breakthrough ideas happen when you accidentally bump into someone from a different team in the hallway, and 20 minutes later you've solved a problem you didn't know you had. You cannot do that on a Zoom call. The collisions matter. The collisions that matter most happen in small, focused teams, not in a 12,000-person campus. The building creates the conditions. The small teams do the work. Those are different things.
Elon Musk is landing rockets, building brain chips, and running 6 companies simultaneously while apparently sleeping 4 hours a night. He's been compared to you constantly, which I imagine would have irritated both of you. Where do you actually land on him?
First principles thinking is real, and Elon does it. He asks, why does it work this way? About things the entire world has accepted as fixed. Rockets being thrown away after one launch. Why? He said, that's insane, and he was right. That is exactly the kind of thinking that makes things that matter. What I respect most is that he bets everything. His personal fortune, his reputation, his time. When Tesla was dying and SpaceX was failing simultaneously, he put the last of his own money in. He didn't hedge. You cannot build something world-changing while hedging. Where I differ is focus. I was ruthless about saying no. The truly great things almost always come from someone who literally cannot think about anything else. 6 major companies simultaneously is a risk I wouldn't take.
Let me stop you. You ran Apple, Next, and Pixar simultaneously. That's 3 significant organizations. Is this the pot and the kettle?
It's a fair challenge. Pixar in that era was largely John Lasseter. I was the business, not the creative obsession. And Apple was the mission that unified everything else. But your point stands. I'm not in a perfect position to lecture anyone on focus.
Your story has been used to justify approximately 1 million bad decisions by 26-year-olds with a vision board. Drop out, trust your gut, get fired, come back stronger. What part of your own legend is the most exaggerated?
The mythology flattens everything. It takes 15 years of grinding, failure, and genuine pain and turns it into a poster on a dorm room wall. The next years were not romantic. I was building hardware that was too expensive for a market that didn't want it. We made extraordinary mistakes and survived mostly because the software we built accidentally became the foundation of the modern web. Pixar almost didn't make it. The Toy Story deal saved the company from bankruptcy at a moment when I'd already lost more money on it than I care to remember. The honest lesson isn't drop out and trust your gut. It's be genuinely excellent at something. Be willing to be wrong and admit it fast. Build small teams of people better than you in their domain, and accept that most good things are partially accidental. The skill is recognizing the accident and running with it.
Lisa Brennan Jobs wrote a memoir about a childhood of poverty while her father was worth millions. Warmth followed by cruelty, improvement that never fully healed. Did you ever actually reckon with it? Not publicly, not in the biography. Actually reckon with it?
Yes, and it's the part of my life I find hardest to explain because there's no explanation that holds up. I was 23, I was terrified, and I behaved terribly. I told myself things I knew on some level weren't true, that I wasn't sure, that I needed to focus on what I was building. Those were stories I told myself because the alternative meant facing something I wasn't ready to face. Lisa and I built a real relationship eventually, but her book is honest, and I have to be honest too. I caused harm that couldn't be undone by a later improvement. You can't give someone back the childhood they deserved. The most you can do is be honest about the damage. The most important story you're telling is not the product story. It's the one your children carry forward. I understood that too late.
Treatable cancer. Doctors had a surgery. 9 months of vegan food and acupuncture instead. By the time you operated, it had spread. You were one of the most rational thinkers in business history. Why?
It was denial, pure human denial. I'd spent 30 years believing that when I focused my will on something, the outcome changed. I had real evidence, products that shouldn't have worked, companies that shouldn't have survived, And then a doctor told me there was a constraint I couldn't think my way out of, and I couldn't accept it. You know, the surgery meant accepting that my body was not a reality distortion field. And by the time I was ready, I'd lost the window. If anyone listening has heard something from a doctor that frightens them, do not do what I did. The same rigor you apply to your work, apply to your body. I applied it to everything except the one thing that actually mattered most.
You told your biographer you were 50-50 on an afterlife. You're now technically on this side of the question. What do you actually think?
The certainty of atheism has always been as hard for me to accept as the certainty of traditional religion. Both require believing you've resolved questions that I think are genuinely open. What Zen gave me wasn't answers about death. It gave me a way of being present. People like me, constitutionally oriented toward what's next, what can be built. We spend almost no time in the present. Zen forced me to practice that. When I knew the end was close, really knew it. What surprised me was how concrete my sense of meaning became. The products fell away. The valuation fell away. What remained was simple. Did the people I loved know I loved them? Did the things I built make the world even slightly better? I think consciousness is one of the most profound mysteries in the universe. The idea that it simply switches off seems to require as much faith as any religion, but I won't pretend to know. The one life you can verify is this one. It moves extraordinarily fast. And the question of what you spend it on is the only question that really matters.
I feel like I should say something clever here. This is Interviews from the Grave. Last question. Not the products, not the market cap. The crazy ones, the misfits. What do you actually want them to carry with them?
I want them to know that the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. That is not a slogan. I have seen it be true. Almost everything I was told was impossible turned out to be possible when the right people cared enough. The personal computer, the music player, the smartphone, every single one was supposed to be someone else's territory, already settled. We walked in anyway. The conventional wisdom is almost always the residue of people who stopped asking questions, make things, not social media content, not posts, make actual things. There is something about taking what exists only in your mind and making it real and making it genuinely great. That is the most human thing you can do. I was lucky enough to do that for most of my life. It was worth everything it cost. Stay hungry, stay foolish, still.
Steve Jobs, everyone. I'm your host, Mort. If you are alive and listening, please hit that subscribe button while you're still here with us. This is Interviews from the Grave.